Come along with me to start my annotation journey. Welcome to A Little Bit Monica. I am so excited to have you here today. I am also very excited because I am starting a new annotation journey. I don't know what to call it other than I am embarking on this grand goal of learning how to annotate my books. I loved annotating when I was in college. It was a lot of like textbooks, but also what I studied had a lot of I can't say it's similar books to what I read now, but less textbook style and more just like actual reading material. And I annotated a lot and I really enjoyed it. So knowing that, I'm really excited to give it a shot with the books that I am reading now. I do feel like I'm probably going to prioritize fantasy and romantasy in my annotating, just because I feel like they're probably a lot easier to do and easier to find things that really stick with me. But I also want to consider annotating romance because I do feel like there's going to be a lot of material there to work with as well. So starting my annotating journey, I wanted to pick a book that I felt confident that marking it up would not be a regret, because I think that's one thing that has been kind of a hesitation for me, is being afraid that I'm going to start annotating a book and find out that I don't actually care about it and DNFing the book and then being stuck with a half marked up book that I then can't really sell or have to sell really cheap because I marked it up. So I want to pick books that I feel very confident that I'm going to want to keep forever and be really happy with the marks that I make in it. So I decided to go with a sequel for my first book because I absolutely loved the first one. And the first book that I read was Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I read this, it was in my top 10 books of 2023. So I definitely am a huge fan of this story, and I was really excited for the sequel to come out, which is Ruthless Vows. And this came out at the end of December, and so I'm very excited to start reading this. I buddy read Divine Rivals with Michelle, and I will be buddy reading Ruthless Vows with Michelle as well. But this time I am going to be annotating as well. Then eventually I will reread this one and eventually annotate it. So they are a matching set, but I'm very excited to get started on this journey. I will just take a second here and I will show you some of the materials that I picked up so that I could start doing all this. Specific things that I am using, I do have this like midnight color and my blue highlighter I'm using for anything that has to do with iris, which I'm really excited for. I also have these little tabs, and literally tomorrow I have more tabs coming, but I wanted to make this video when I'm starting because I'm going to read like the first 100 pages of this book tonight. So I definitely wanted to start doing this with the materials that I already have, but I do have a ton more tabs coming tomorrow that's going to be really helpful. But right now I have these like little ones. They have half clear and then the blue. I'm going to use those to represent Iris, who is the main female character. And then I have a gold highlighter and pen and some little, like, I don't say these are really gold, but they're more like a tan color of tab to represent things for Roman, who is the male main character. And then, so the first one is Divine Rivals, and it is about kind of like a war of the gods. There is a big theme of divinity and the war that the humans are fighting on behalf of the gods. And so I am using a gray highlighter and gray silver shimmery gel pen, one of the only ones that worked in the pack, and I'm using these for things, references, quotes, whatever, with the gods specifically, because the gods are characters, which is very interesting. So I am using gray for those. And then, like I said, I have this pink highlighter. I'm not so much writing a whole lot about the romance just yet, and I need to find my pink pen, but I'm using the pink highlighter for romance type of notations. And then I do have this black pen in case there's any miscellaneous things that I want to do. And oh, I also forgot, I have some pink tabs as well for things about the romance. So that is kind of an overview of the materials I have right now. I am still working on collecting things and just kind of figuring out what works for me. So honestly, some of this might change by the end of the book. I don't think the colors or anything will, because once I start using them, I'm gonna have to be consistent through the rest of the book. But as I do this book and then move on to other books later, I am definitely going to kind of adapt my style and see what works for me, because this is a journey and I'm really excited to see how annotating goes. And because I loved the first book so much, I'm really excited to get into the sequel and be able to make notes in it so that when I go and revisit the book later on or do a reread, I can look back and remember exactly some of the thoughts that were swimming through my head while I was reading. And I am very excited to see what happens as I dive into the sequel. Just under 100 pages into this book. It is at a part 2 break, so it was a pretty good place to stop. I am absolutely loving this book so far. I feel like I might even be loving it more early on than I did with Divine Rivals, and I knew very, very early on that I was going to love Divine Rivals, but this one has a different vibe to it. And it's all based on how Divine Rivals ends, so I don't want to say too much and end up spoiling because that's not the point of what I'm doing, but I am obsessed with these characters. Roman and Iris are precious, and I love them both, and I am very eager to see how everything unravels throughout this book because they are in some very precarious situations. And it's very nerve-wracking right now. But I feel the pieces coming together already, which is a good sign. This is just over 400 pages, so I'm about a quarter of the way through right now. I am not listening to audio, I am just reading physically, and I have started my little tabbing and annotating journey. So right now, I haven't done a whole lot, but I do have some small notes here and there, a couple of highlighted pages, just quotes that really stuck out to me, or scenes that were oh yes scenes that were just really meaningful so far and that I would want to revisit to remember. But yeah, so far this is going really well. I don't think that this is something that I want to do for every book because it does take a lot to kind of process it. It makes the reading a little bit slower, but because of how much I love the first one, I'm really glad that I'm taking my time with this one and able to really process what's happening, really understand the characters a bit more, and yeah, just kind of sitting with everything a lot longer. And this is just a really fun process, and I'm glad that I am trying this annotating, and as much as I am enjoying it, I do feel like I'm probably not going to want to do this super often, but we shall see, because this is a lot of fun and it is feeding my office supply organization love and need for those kinds of things. So here is to the first 93 3 pages, and we shall see what the next 100 pages brings tomorrow. Okay, so I kind of forgot to do any updates after like the first 100 pages of this book. However, I am in the last 100 pages now. I have lots of tabs on my book now. Going into the last 100 pages, I am stressed. I am nervous, but I am so excited to find out what is about to happen. There's a lot of political, divine drama. There's a lot of action in this one. I feel like this book is giving me a lot more fast-paced action, kind of in like small spurts, but it feels like it's more actiony than the first one was, which I really appreciate. I am just so eager to find out what is going to go down at the end of this book, because I feel like we're heading down a lot of different paths that are going to have to converge at some point, and I'm very nervous for what that's going to look like. But the way that Iris and Roman have played a part in the story, the way that they have interacted on multiple planes, I'm just very excited to see where this is going to progress for the last 100 pages. It might not be emotionally okay afterwards, but I am ready to experience this. It has taken me a lot longer to get through this than I thought, just because I had a couple of days where I could not read. I just didn't have the time and opportunity to get to it. So I left the last 100 pages for a while, and now I'm finally diving back in, and I cannot wait. I will see you after I have finished. Okay, so I just finished reading Ruthless Vows. I devoured the last 100 pages today. I stayed up really late to do it, and I have no regrets. I have some regrets about staying up so late, but no regrets over finishing this tonight, because I had such a good time reading this. I feel like this took me through so many different emotions, which is exactly what I want when I am reading a book. I think I'm giving this 4.5 to 5 stars. I want to give it a full 5, but there were some elements towards the end of the book that were kind of irritating to me, which I will get to in just a moment. I don't want to go too specific in this because honestly, I'm just really excited about all of the annotations that I have, and I could never go through every single annotation that I made, but I certainly had some moments where I was writing furiously and writing, oh my god, swooning. I had so many emotions during this, but essentially, Roman and Iris, I loved them in Divine Rivals. I loved them in Ruthless Vows. I feel like their story took a really, really beautiful turn in a twisted way. I know when we left off with Divine Rivals, they were in a precarious situation. I'm assuming if you're here, it's because you either have already read Divine Rivals or you don't care to know anything about it. So essentially, when we pick up with this book, Roman and Iris are not together physically. Like, they are in separate places, and that is a whole new dynamic. I mean, in book one, they are not together the whole time, but by the time they have their like fully fledged relationship, you know, they're together for the rest of the story. And then in this one, they are very much separated for a lot of it, and I really liked the dynamic. I really, really, really loved the reintroduction of the letter writing that kind of was supposed to be a main focus of the first book, and it was picked up in here, and I think it had so much more meaning in this book. I think I want to give this 5 full stars now that I'm talking about it, because I feel like I liked this book more than I liked the first one. But I gave the first one 5 full stars because I was absolutely not trying to be nitpicky at all. I was not thinking about criticisms whatsoever. I was in it for a good time, and I had a good time. I was in this for a good time, and I still had a really, really, really good time. However, there were some things, especially at the end, that I just wasn't a huge fan of. Like the fact that there were 3 epilogues, essentially. I'm sorry, but when I'm reading a book, when I get to an epilogue, I want it to be like once and done. I don't want to finish it and then turn the page and find out that there's more, because I've already like mentally shut down. I've already like closed the book in my head. And when I turn the page and find out that there's more, I don't care as much. I understand why there were 3 epilogues. I understand why the things were included the way they were. However, it just felt a little bit less cohesive than I would have preferred for an ending. And so that alone makes me want to knock it down a half point, but at the same time, the majority of the book I enjoyed more than I did with Divine Rivals, and I don't know if any of that makes any sort of sense. It certainly only makes a little bit of sense to me, but basically, I loved Roman and Iris in this book. I loved their communication through the letters. I loved the situations that they were in and how they had to overcome them. I really, really, really liked all the other interpersonal relationships that we get to see within this book. I feel like book one, we only ever got to really meet a couple of characters that were, you know, important to the main storyline. Obviously, they had friends when they were, you know, back home, but then they go to the front and they meet Addie and Marisol. And like, that's kind of it, actually, until this book, when we get to revisit some older characters that we knew and just didn't know as much. But we also get to meet a couple of additional characters in this one that I think, you know, played a starring role and were really, really awesome. And I really enjoyed getting to read those stories. People got love stories that hadn't before, and I really loved those. And all around, like, I just enjoyed so many elements of this. I also think that one of the things that stood out to me the most in this book, and I have mentioned this to a couple other people already, that Ruthless Vows has such a bigger focus on the fantasy element than Divine Rivals ever did. Divine Rivals is literally like it's a divine war. It is a war between gods. And I feel like we kind of got the main story of what was happening, but this story goes so much deeper and actually picks up with that war of the gods and just absolutely makes it into a whole new plot world that is just I'm almost speechless because of the way this incorporated the gods and the fantasy element so much more than in the first one. All in all, I feel like this book worked for me so well, and I have absolutely zero regrets over annotating. I'm really proud of how pretty it looks, and this was with some very, I don't know, like I don't want to call them beginner, but I had very few supplies when I started annotating this. And obviously I kept with the same supplies throughout because I could never switch supplies in the middle. Like it would, my brain would be gone if I did that. However, I'm really proud of the, like, this was the starter pack of like tabs and highlighters and pens that I had, and they ended up working really, really well, and I think they're really pretty. I think they work color wise. I have the pink and the blue and the tannish that's supposed to be kind of gold, and it matches as much as I could kind of the covers of the books, which Divine Rivals is a little bit of a more pink color, has more of like the pink I think on it, but I'm just really happy with the way that I annotated, and this makes me feel so much more confident about annotating in the future. I'm just like flipping through. I literally had written at the top of the page here, this is one of my favorite scenes from Divine Rivals. I think this was talking about the trenches scene. And then I don't know, like just being able to mark up this book, writing my thoughts, and so the next time I revisit these books, I can remember exactly what I was thinking when I read it the first time. And it's just, it feels so different annotating a book rather than just consuming it and then putting it away and forgetting that it ever existed, because here I have solidified my thoughts and I can revisit them whenever I want. And honestly, I will probably do that because I am really proud of this first attempt. I don't even want to call it an attempt because this was a success. Annotating was fun, and I cannot wait to do my next book. I have a feeling I know what my next one is going to be, but we shall see, because annotating is really scary because you never know if you might regret annotating a book if you have not read it before. Because if you get halfway and you decide you don't like it and you've already started annotating, then it's a little bit too late. But overall, I really had such a good time, and I cannot wait to continue annotating with other books in the future. I am really curious to find out if anybody else annotates when they read. How often do you annotate? And if you have suggestions on annotation, I am all ears. I am still getting started finding my groove, kind of finding my style with annotation. I have a lot of supplies, but still deciding what kinds of things I want to mark. For this, I just focused on the two main characters and their romance. And I like the simplicity of how I did this book, but I do feel like there are other books and other situations where I would want to be more detailed. I would want to have more elements. Like, one thing as I finished this that I realized I wished I had done was have a separate tab for my favorite quotes in the book, because I had some really, really good quotes that I highlighted, but I would have to flip through all my tabs to find out where they are. So I think that's something I really want to focus on for the next book that I decide to do, is just really honing in on what things I want to point out when I'm annotating, what kinds of tabs I want to be putting in, what lines I want to be highlighting, that kind of thing. So I'm still kind of finding my style. So if you have suggestions on things that work really well for you, I would absolutely love to hear that in the comments, or you can shoot me a message. I have all my social media stuff linked in the description. You can find me, message me. I would love to talk either about Ruthless Vows, because I still have a lot of thoughts in my head after finishing it, or if you want to talk about annotating or anything along those lines, I would love to talk to you some more. If you don't want to miss out on any of my future annotation videos that I am hoping to have coming up in the next couple of weeks or months, please hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on my future videos. I am very excited for what I have coming with annotation, with journaling, with all the things that are so exciting about the beginning of the year and some very anticipated new releases coming up. I'm telling you now that you don't want to miss out. But now I do want to thank you so much for coming along with me on this beginning of my annotation journey, and I really, really hope that I will see you in the next video. Have a great day. Bye!